Welcome to life. Country to love, faith and commitment. Welcome to life. Country to love, faith and commitment. Welcome to life. Country to love, faith and commitment. Welcome to life.
It is the longest book in the Bible. It is the hymn book of Israel. It contains the songs and the prayers of the people of God in the nation of Israel. There are 5 divisions of the Psalms. Maybe this division corresponds to the 5 books of the law we call the Pentateuch. Sometimes I hear people say, I'm reading from the 3rd division of the Psalms, and they mean the 3rd Psalm. That's incorrect. Some people say, I'm reading from the 3rd number of Psalms. That is wordy and verbose. 3 is a number. But the 5 division of the Psalms, the first book is from Psalm 1 to Psalm 41. The second book of the Psalms goes from Psalm 42 to 72. The third book of the Psalms goes from Psalm 73 to 89. The fourth book of the Psalms goes from Psalms 90 to Psalm 106. The fifth book of the Psalms goes from Psalm 107 to Psalm 150. They are called the Psalms of David, but David did not write all of the Psalms. As a matter of fact, the first 2 books of the Psalms, that is Psalm 1 through 41 and 42 to 72, those are the ones primarily attributed to David. The other Psalms were written by men like Asaph and Korah. Moses wrote one, and some we don't know exactly who wrote them. So the Psalms, particularly in the first 2 books that were written by David, there are times when we attempt to discover what was going on in David's life at the time he wrote that particular psalm. There are some we have no idea. Others we can almost directly trace to an experience in David's life. We almost are certain that Psalm 51 was written by David when he had committed the great sin of adultery and murder with Bathsheba and Uriah. But some of the Psalms we just don't know. But this 57th Psalm, our teaching for the morning, I'm almost sure that we know the origination of this psalm. And I'd like to read, if I could, the background of this psalm in 1 Samuel chapter 22. Now, I'm going to read this from the New Living Translation, and I hope that many of you will acquaint yourself with this translation because it does help with the reading of the scripture. Listen at these words, and I'm going to preach a series of sermons from this pulpit on the life of David, but let me give you just this little snippet from his life. 1 Samuel 22, and commencing at verse 1 from the New Living Translation says, So David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. Soon his brothers and other relatives joined him there. Then others began coming, men who were in trouble or in debt or who were just discontented, until David was the leader of about 400 men. Later, David went to Mizpah in Moab. Anybody remember talking about Moab on Thursday night? Where he asked the king, would you let my father and mother live here until under royal protection? Listen to this. Until I know what God is going to do for me. The king agreed. And David's parents stayed in Moab while David was living in the stronghold. What's going on here, Pastor, in 1 Samuel 22 and in Psalm 57? Well, what is going on is David is catching hell. David is in a bad situation. Now, David has killed Goliath and saved the nation from embarrassment. But Saul, having departed from God, Saul, having his heart turned away from God, became jealous of David. And after the death of Goliath, when the women began to sing, Saul killed his thousands, David his 10,000s, the heart of the king of Israel was determined to get rid of David. He was out to kill him. He was out to destroy him. Anywhere David went, he was under the threat that the king of Israel, with his vast armies and his militia and his military might, was trying to take him out. Now, he went to a cave called the Cave of Adullam. We'll preach about that when we deal with this David series. But he only had 400 men, and the Bible said they were discontent, in distress, and in debt. Sounds like the church, doesn't it? But they came to David, but they had no ability to deal with the vast army of the virulent hatred of a king who wanted to take his life. This wasn't just some skirmish. This was not just some mild issue. David's life was in danger. And so, this psalm speaks to us out of that situation. And there are three things I want to show you, and I'll be done. The first thing I want to show you is that the problem that David had were the attackers. David's face was on every tree, wanted dead or alive. There was a reward on David's head. Everyone in Israel knew that they would be awarded by the king if David was killed. You know, I don't know if you know it or not, but the scriptures have a powerful way of speaking to our contemporary situation. And just in case you didn't know it, the reason you're going through what you are going through is that the devil is trying to kill you. Oh, you can play with your spirituality if you want. You can dance around the edges of the Christian life, but the moment you became a child of God, the devil set to take you out. So just everybody in here, Satan has a warrant. Satan has organized his powers, his demons, his minions, his servants. And why do you think so many things get after you? Why do you think the closer you get to God, the more trouble you have? You have a malevolent enemy. You have a vicious enemy. He's licking his chops. He watches you as you drive your car, as you sit at the table, as you get in and out of your shower, as you go in and out of your job. Everywhere you go, there are these demons all around you with one goal: to see how they can hurt you. And if they can't make you sick, they'll try to discourage you. And if they can't discourage you, they'll try to make you discontent. They'll mess with your marriage, your money, your ministry. They'll mess with everything around you. They'll try to make you think you're losing your mind. They'll cause trouble in your house. You get your refrigerator fixed and your child will act crazy. Your child gets straight and your car will break down. Your car will get straight and your job will get funny. And just about the time you're ready to start enjoying your life, something breaks out. You're under attack. Know what's going on. Satan's on my track, trying to turn me back. He wants to take your testimony. He wants to make you curse God to his face. He wants to make you leave the church. He wants to make you say there's nothing to this. He wants to make you say it was better for me in the world. He wants to make you say I don't want to be bothered. He wants to make you think if this is what it is, I can do without this. He's after your testimony. He wants to steal your victory. He wants to take your crown. He wants to embarrass you. He wants to tear you down. And if possible, he wants to kill you. Look at the 4th verse. Verse 4 said, my soul is among lions. He didn't mean the 4-legged kind. I lie even among they that are set on fire. Even the sons of men whose teeth are spears and arrows and their tongues are sharp swords. If they can't hurt me, they'll talk about me like a dog. But then he said, be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above the earth. Now, have you noticed that in the midst of David describing his attackers, he puts a praise right in the middle? You've got to learn to put a praise. Whenever you're complaining about what you're going through, put a praise in there. Whenever you are assessing the difficulty of your situation, right in the middle of catching hell, say, but God is good anyhow. When tears are rolling down your cheeks, say, I will bless the Lord at all times. So he says, they prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me. But listen to what he says. And they're going to fall in the pit that they dug. Let me give you some poetry. If you dig one ditch, you better dig two. The one you dig for me might just be for you. God has a way of making your enemy fall into the same thing they tried to bring you down. Ask Haman, who erected the gallows to kill Mordecai. Didn't he die on those same gallows? It looks for a moment like the wicked prosper, but the Bible said they're like a green bay tree. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity. They'll soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green. But you trust in the Lord and you shall be fed. Delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. Now, I would get to verse 7, but it'll take me to another preaching ground I don't have time for. He said, my heart is fixed, O God. My heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise. Church, at some point in your time, you've got to put it down, stand on it, declare it. My heart is fixed. Let trouble happen around me. My heart is fixed. Let the enemy do everything he can to hurt me. What really matters is if you're at church, my heart is fixed and my mind is made up. No matter what hurts you or harms you or hobbles you, when that heart is fixed, settled and determined. Now, so that's where he's asking. That's where he is attacking. He's being attacked. But then if you go back to verse 1, here's what he's asking God for in the midst of being attacked. Now, I want you to notice something. I said earlier that prayer is an attitude. Look at verse 1. Verse 1 teaches us that even when you pray, there's a certain way to pray for your prayers to be effective. Now, he describes in verse 5, 6, and 7 his attackers. But listen to what he says when he talks to God. Be merciful unto me, O God. Be merciful unto me. Listen. My soul trusts in thee. So he says, Lord, be merciful. Listen, that doesn't sound like this is a person in great distress. But listen at the way he laces his distress with his confidence in God. Listen, he says, be merciful unto me, O God, be merciful. My soul trusts in thee. Yes, in the shadow of thy wings will I make my refuge. Now stop for a moment. Now I just read to you he was in the cave of Adullam. This was a military stronghold. This was a safe place for him. But church, let me tell you something. The only safe place you have is in God. Do not ever get to any particular physical, I'm getting a revelation here. Don't get into a physical place and call it a safe place. No. See, and don't get into a place with friends. Oh, I know this is my friend, baby. Maybe not. The only safe place is under the shadow of his wings. Here's what, didn't I read it somewhere? He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and he is my fortress. He is my God. In him will I trust. Your only safe place. And what I like about the Lord is he has a secret place. He can put you somewhere nobody can see you. They can looking at you, but they can't get to you. He can be a fence all around you. He'll be your God. He'll be the God in front of you, the God on both sides. When you're under his shadow, who can get under the shadow of the Almighty? Who can broach the stronghold of God? Who can get you when God has got you? He's holding you in the palm of his hands. No demon, no devil, no loser, no liar, no enemy can pluck you out of his hands. Safe in his arms. Anybody know about the wings? It's not the alarm on my car. It's not the alarm on my house. It's not the 9mm in my back pocket. The Lord is my help. The Lord, no other help I know. And you have to get to the point where you don't count on anything. You don't count on anybody. Your job might be gone tomorrow. Your house might be gone before the day is over. Your insurance policy might be canceled. Your bishop can die. Your church might be washed up. But I know somebody. There is a place where trouble cannot get to you. There is a place where the enemy cannot find you. And what I like about God is he has a strange way of protecting you right in the middle of the trouble. Right in the midst of the hell, he'll be a heaven around you. Right in the midst of the storm, he'll be your peace. Right, my enemy standing right beside you. And what will he do? He'll prepare a table. He doesn't always drive your enemies away. He'll prepare a table and they'll have to stand there and watch you eat. I wish I could preach about that. Under the shadow. I know why I'm here today. Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with my education. Nothing to do with my intellect. I'm under the shadow. He walks with me. He talks with me. He makes death behave. He holds my hand. He heals my body. He secures my soul. He's my refuge and strength. I make my refuge while the storm is passing by. Do you know anything about storms? But while the storm is passing by, I'm in the refuge. While things are shaking everywhere, I watch the storm pass by. While the calamity is just outside my door, I'm looking out saying, it's all right. Back in Flint, Michigan, in the 50s, a certain section of town was populated by a certain group of people. I would not call their nationality, you probably guess. But they moved there because they wanted to get away from certain other ethnic groups, and they went out on Miller Road and built this wonderful subdivision. But a tornado came through, and an old lady living on the edge of this sophisticated subdivision just had a little shack. And you know, they tell me, I know nothing about it. They tell me that a tornado sounds like a train. So what did it sound like before there were trains? So the old lady heard this commotion. Says she got her stick and walked to the door and saw that tornado coming straight for her house and stuck out her bony, prayerful thing and said, "Ride on, King Jesus." And they tell me that storm lifted up over her house It might be coming your way, but it doesn't have to hurt you. It might attack you, but it can't keep you. Right on, King Jesus. I know who's holding me. I know who's protecting me. Let it storm. Let it rain. Let the floods come. Let the river rise. I know in whom I have, and he's able. Anybody know he's able? He'll hold you. When everything is shaking, you'll stand on steady ground. I don't have any children here. But if I had any children here, I would tell you one of the funniest cartoons I've ever seen was a Bugs Bunny cartoon. And Bugs Bunny was really, he was something else. One day Bugs Bunny, Jordan, was sitting on a tree limb. And his enemy cut off the limb. And in the cartoon, the tree fell, but the limb stayed. That's the God I serve. Go ahead and cut my limb off. But if I'm standing with the Lord, he's holding my situation. He's holding my difficulty. He's holding my trial. The tree might fall, but the limb will stand. That's the God I serve. Yeah. Ain't you glad about it? All right, I got to let you go. But then verse 2 is where I got to wrap this up. I will cry unto God Most High. Little teaching there. That word is El Elyon, Most High God. Now, El is the Hebrew word for God, capital E-L, then E-L-Y-O-N. It's L-L, high, how high, most high, ultimate high, the highest of high. I know who's above everything and everybody, every situation. He's got the whole world in his hand, the Most High God, the ultimate high God, the high God above the high, the top of the top, I can't describe it. Most High God. Watch this. That performs all things for me. That's personal. Now, I like to read different translations. The King James Version said, performs all things for me. The New American Standard said he accomplishes all things for me. The New Living Translation and the English Standard Version say he performs his purposes in my life. So now you got to get the picture. If God, hear me this morning, is accomplishing, performing, and perfecting everything for you, then what's going on around you might not matter. See, church, when you really start to believe in God, it will change your perspective. Maybe you're going through this for a reason. Maybe you're going through this for a testing. Maybe you're going through this to deepen your faith and enlarge your vision. And maybe God is trying to teach you something. He never was going to let the enemy hurt you, but God can even take the wrath of your enemy and the attack of the devil to perform something in your life. And let me tell you something. If you are a wise saint, you need to hear me this morning. You will never go through anything and not get something out of it. See, too many of you suffer, and that's all you do. But if you suffer, you ought to come out a little sweeter, a little more prayerful. Some of you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Some of you ought to just be embarrassed. Of all you've been through, you ought to have more faith than anybody in New Orleans. Look at what you've been through. You've lost loved ones. Some of you buried spouses. You buried children. Some of you been divorced and bankrupt and hurt and let down. Your spirit's been wounded. You've cried bitter tears. You've walked through dark nights, and you have the audacity. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. After all you've been through, and you still a shallow Christian. Of all you've been through, you still like a piece of china. Don't you know china is very delicate? If you drop this on the floor, it's liable to break. But God, you ought to be a mason jar by now. You can drop a mason jar on the floor. It's not going to break. Don't you know by now you ought to be able to defeat any devil? Look at what you've been through. Look at what God has brought you through. Look at how your heart's been broken. But here you are today. You didn't lose your mind. You didn't go to an insane asylum. You ought to stand up and tell that devil, nothing shall separate me from the love of God. Neither height, nor depth, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come. But all these things were more than conquerors. He took your church, but you kept on. He took your tent, but you kept on. He put you in a school, but you kept on. You kept saying, yes, I'm a child of God. I made a vow to the Lord, and I won't take it back. The Lord give it, and the Lord to bless it. Be the name of the Lord. Please. You ought to be so strong in God. By now, nothing should bother you. Don't you know God is perfecting your situation? Don't you know you didn't go through that for nothing? Don't you know you tougher than pig iron? Don't you know that water can't drown you and death can't kill you? Don't you know you've been through the valley, you've been through the dark night, and here you are this morning saying, bless the Lord, oh my soul. I want you to stand in the power of God and say, I'm going to get something out of what I've been through. I will not waste my pain. I will not waste my difficulty. I'm going to take everything the Lord gave me. I'm going to tell you this, and I've got to close. Two more things I got to tell you, and I promise I'll be finished. I told a story the other night in worshiping the word about a lady. I keep telling you about these racial inequities. Sister Peter's a lady bought a house in that neighborhood where they didn't want people like me. So the lady in the other house thought she would embarrass and hurt the new unwanted neighbor. So she had, how can I be delicate? Untreated fertilizer. Now see, I tried to be nice. Manure. And she kept throwing it over the fence. Some people are bad neighbors. One day the rich certain lady got sick. Her neighbor came to her hospital with a beautiful set of roses. She said, you had no right to bring me roses. I've been mean to you. She said, but that's all right. I'm a Christian. She said, but I want to ask you a question. As she prepared to walk out the door, Laverne, she said, where did you get those roses? She said, you don't want to know. She said, they're so beautiful. What florist? She said, no, you don't want to know. She was almost out the door. She said, you don't want to know. I said, but tell me. She said, if you got to know, let me tell you, I've got a rose bush in my backyard. And every time you threw untreated fertilizer in my yard, I put it around my roses. Every time the devil throws untreated fertilizer in your backyard, grow some roses. Don't get bitter, get better. God can take untreated fertilizer and grow you a beautiful garden. And all things work together. Last thing and I'm done. How does God perfect that which concerns you? How does he do it? It's in the text, isn't it always? I believe it's always in the text. Here it is. Say good day. All right, good day. It says, he shall send from heaven and save me. I wish I could preach that. He'll send from heaven. See, my help is not down here. He'll send from heaven. Don't let me preach on that. Don't encourage me. Don't encourage me. He'll send from heaven. He doesn't need my job. He doesn't need my friends. He'll send help from heaven. What kind of help is in heaven? All my help. I said all my help comes from the Lord. He'll supply all my need according to his riches. Now gas, I'll prove it to you. Gas was almost $4 a gallon. You drove your car. Steak now, not steak, bread and milk is $5. And you don't look like you fasting to me. We say we ain't got no money, maybe you don't. But your hair is fried and dyed and laid. You got your nails done. You got your toes pedicured. You got on your Sunday go to meeting. You got a car on the parking lot. He's good anyhow. You don't know how you did it. You just put a child through school. You don't know how you did it. Your bills get paid. You don't know how you did it. You don't make enough money. You don't have enough education. But if the Lord is on your side, he'll make a way out of no way. Here it is. Here it is. He'll save me from the reproach of him that will swallow me up. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. That's what he accomplishes in your life. You live by his mercy. Now see, I'm glad, Dr. Houston, that he didn't just say truth. If he said truth, I couldn't preach. Because sometimes I don't live as sanctified and as holy as I ought to live. Now, I ain't no real bad person, but every now and then, periodically, intermittently, something happened, you know. Somebody cut me off in traffic and I don't say praise the Lord. Or I watch a movie I shouldn't watch. Or sometimes people upset me and the spirit of my grandmother comes upon me. My grandmother could quote the Bible and cuss you out in the same breath. And me and Alicia got that same anointing. Oh, but it's not just his truth, it's his mercy. When I mess up, I've got his mercy. When I'm not straight, I have his mercy. When I color outside the line, I live by surely goodness and shall follow me all the days of my life. And that's a blessed assurance in a bad situation.
To that place where abundant lies abide. Come to that place where you will find